Hey guys, we are ready to start our next one. Let me just do this real quick. I'm going to hide that. All right, so we're looking at the P2 is about the spread of scientific knowledge, but I got convinced that. So I do hope you've changed your power map, and the P2 really instead about the spread, it's about the how the Anglo-French rivalry impacted science. And as we look at that, we're going to find out early on, France is going to lead the way in the 17th century under the age of Louis XIV. But because of the way science was set up there, it will begin to be limited to the demands of the state. And by the time we do the 18th century, England becomes the forefront of science because of the way it developed. In some ways, it's very much parallel to the economic and political systems. France is about absolutism, it's about mercantilism, it's about control. Where in England, it's about constitutionalism, capitalism, and freedom. And we're going to see how that really impacts. So I do hope that makes sense. So let's go and get rocking. All right, guys, so scientific societies. So again, the back one is the French science. The French Academy was founded really by Louis XIV in 1666. But I do want to make sure you understand Colbert, Jean-Baptiste Colbert, he's the one that said we need a society for the prestige of France, but also to help lead the way in the development of the mercantile sciences. So Louis XIV unloaded a ton of capital, that bullion of mercantilism. And there's going to be this quick fix here. So I do want to point out the French Academy in 1066, it was up and running, fully funded by Louis XIV with the hope of mercantilism, the king's control, and then we focus on mercantile and military sciences. Mercantile science would be about canals, infrastructure, industries, and then we begin to talk about military sciences, new armaments, new ways to kill people. That's going to be the kind of the elements that we're doing. And then we can also start talking about the Marquis de Louvois, of course. So again, that French Academy. But for me, the most important thing is the king controls it. The king creates the agenda. There is no freedom here. The bourgeoisie, the merchants, they have very little to do with the discoveries. And the scientists don't have the freedom to do what they want. Really kind of important. Oh, and the last thing about the French Academy, it's all about practical science, which we're not shocked because Louis XIV wanted practical science to help benefit the state. Well, this is really different. It's juxtaposed, if you will, to the English Royal Society. The English Royal Society was founded a little bit earlier in 1662, and really soon after the Restoration, where there's a sense of excitement that the Restoration occurred, and you have Charles II, the Merry Monarch, and he has this piece of paper charter. A group of merchants said, hey, we would really want to establish a royal society. And Charles goes, well, how much are you willing to pay for it? And whatever it was, they gave Charles the money, and then Charles gave him the charter to establish an English Royal Society. Totally cool. And what we see is going to remain. Charles II had very little interest in trying to tell them what to do because he was just enjoying life, being the merry monarch. But it remains independent of state control. So this really is based on that capitalism of the age. State is not in control of the economy, nor is it in charge of the science. And with that, we begin to see that they're going to be able to focus on theoretical science. The scientists are going to be able to ponder, which is really important. They're able to ponder, think through, create experiments. They're going to have an income based on their theoretical science. They're not worried about the practicality of it. Practical science is too limited, right? So they're theoretically pondering things like, let's say, gravity. Well, who would have ever thought gravity had anything to do with anything? And yet, what's going to happen because of the work of Newton being financed by the merchants, not the king, so the merchants finance the Royal Society. They give an income to people like Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton ponders gravity, develops calculus, and what we're going to find is that's going to lead to this thing called the industrial age, because theoretical knowledge is going to have something to do with the future. Very important. Before I move on to the slide, I just want to point out France, dominated by the king, state control, mercantile mindset, no freedom, lots of capital early on. But in England, the Royal Society is funded by the merchants. Merchants trust the scientists will develop something that will provide them profit, and the outcome, theoretical science, leads the way to a new modern era. Really important you see that. Now, the journals are the exact same thing, isn't it? It's more evidence about the limitations of France. The French journals de savants. Their whole point is they're weekly publications that are supposed to describe the general scientific knowledge. And again, it's general scientific knowledge. This is to the average French person who can read. I argue as a historian that it's all about educating the public, which means it's about justification of government expenses. The journals are not about advancing science. They're about informing people so they feel good about their taxes, to create a sense of nationalism. Really important. I hope you see the importance of that. So it's not about scientists talking to scientists. It's about scientists spending time trying to put their science in the vernacular so they can talk to the dumb people like me, so that they can simplify it. Well, the British philosophical transactions, that is once again funded by the merchants, are very different. This is about practicing scientists. So they're going to publish this in scientific jargon. And the whole point of philosophical transactions is to put forth accomplished scientists have created these scientific experiments. They draw conclusions. Now they're publishing their findings. And they're thinking about what is this right or is it wrong? So they push them out to other scientists so that they can be challenged and tested. So the whole point of this is to advance science. Screw communicating to the common people. They're peons. We're amongst experts and we're trying to advance our scientists. This is really similar to what we see in America. We have mechanical engineering journals. We have medical journals. And these are all very similar. They're based on these ideas in which only scientists can advance science. So therefore, Great Britain is developing infrastructure to advance science. France is controlling infrastructure to justify expenditures. So these scientific developments, guys, really important. We see both France and England, they contribute much to science. There's no doubt. France is a 17th century leader in science. And we see this. But I want to point out, just because they have this vast investment from the crown, what happens when the crown doesn't have that money? Science is going to be limited by the mercantile and military needs of the crown. There's no thought outside of what's demanded. And remember, in class, they even talked about, because France is trying to build a wave of nationalism, we begin to see they reject the writings of Newton. And I think I said it's going to take 100 years before they get to Newton. I'm off a little bit. It was less than about 50 years. But it's going to have to take the death of Louis XIV to give way to the new study of Newton. So again, king limiting. And this is the opposite. Britain, though, created a permanent foundation of advances. Despite the English Civil War, despite the Restoration, the Glorious Revolution, the wars of Louis XIV, despite what you and I might be like, crap, that's a lot of chaos, they were able to establish the foundation for the 18th and 19th century Industrial Revolution. France is going to be lingering behind. Despite their greatness in the 17th century, they're going to enter a decline from soon after. We're going to see this a little bit later, of course. We're going to talk about the Enlightenment, and then we're going to talk about those political developments after that. But I hope that makes sense. And with that, we are done with that lecture.